Hello, in this video, I'm gonna demonstrate the process how our user to grant access to the request scopes and how we are going to use these scopes for our Maximizer CRM add-on. So firstly, I'm gonna introduce you how many clients we have. So as you see here, there are 3 clients, and these 2 were generated by the system automatically, and this one was created by ourselves. So let me introduce this one first. So it says Gsuite Marketplace Integration Client. So we assume this should be used in the Google Marketplace when user tries to install the add-on. So let me go to the Google Marketplace. So this is our Maximize CRM for Gsuite add-on. And if user click the button to install, okay. So as you see here, there are only 4 scopes here. The reason why it doesn't include the Google Calendar scopes is that we haven't published the new version of the add-on for Google Calendar. The version in the Google Marketplace is still for the Gmail. So that's why we only for these, you can only see these 4 scopes for the Gmail. And because Gmail add-on is already published and the scopes are already verified, so I'm not going to introduce these scopes. The thing I want to introduce is if I copy paste this URL here, and if I also copy and paste the client here, and search from the authorization, I cannot see this client ID is included in the URL. And even if I search the client, I cannot find anything regarding client ID. So this is what we are suspecting, that if we are even using this client. Okay, so that's the introduction for this client. And then let me introduce another client. This is the client for app script. So this one should be used by the app script or the add-on itself. So let me go to the Google Calendar to launch the add-on. So if you click this icon to launch the Maximize CRM add-on and click Authorize Access link, okay. And the reason why I see this warning is our scope were not even verified. So just go to Maximize CRM. Okay, so this time let me copy paste this authorization URL and let me copy paste the client ID for the app script and search. Okay, you can clearly see that the authorization URL has already included this client ID, so we can ensure that this process is to grant requested scope for this client. Okay. So now let me introduce how we are going to use these requested scopes. So I think let me just copy paste these scopes to the notepad here, and let me just finish the authorization process so we can see how we are going to use this clearly. So let's go back to here. Once you finish the authorization or OAuth process for the add-on, you will see this UI. And let me introduce the scopes. Okay, so as you see here, these are the scopes we need for the add-on. The reason why we need the first three scope is I think these scopes are the mandatory scopes to launch the add-on. I made some tests. If we just miss one of them, we will not be able to even launch the UI of the add-on. So that's why we need these three basic scopes. And this one, see and download any calendar that you can access using your Google Calendar. The reason why we need this one is you can see there is a calendar setting. If you click this, you go to the UI, and the add-on reads the available calendars from the authorization the users, which is similar to this section. So that's the reason why we need these scopes to read the Google Calendar. And the last four scopes are just for Gmail. And because the scopes for Gmail was already verified and approved, so I'm not going to introduce these scopes again. Okay, so these are all the scopes for the add-on. Okay, so the last client is the Google. It's called a calendar. It's used by our calendar sync service. So let's go back to the Google Calendar, and let me introduce you how our project works. So the Google Calendar integration project has two parts. One is the add-on, as you see here. The other component is the back-end sync service. So the add-on is used for the user to set up some preferences for the sync, and the back-end sync service does the real job to sync the events to Maximizer. So that's the reason why we need a client for the sync service as well. And the process how the user grant the access to the requested scope for the sync service is they can click this button here. Okay, let me enlarge this. And again, let me copy paste this authorization URL, and let me copy paste the client ID for this client and paste it here. And if you search it, okay, you can see the authorization URL includes this client. So we are sure this process is for this client. Okay, let's go back to the Google Calendar, and let's just finish this OAuth process. Okay. As you see here, for this kind we need these scopes. So I will copy paste these scopes to the notebook here. And it says Maxima CRM already has some access, which means this scope has already been granted. So I will also copy and paste this scope, because this will also be used by this client as well. Okay, so let me finish the OAuth process here. Continue. Success. Okay. So once user finish the OAuth for the sync service, the sync service will start running and sync the event from Google to Maximizer. Okay, so now let me introduce why we need these scopes. Okay, so for the first four, which is all regarding the Google contacts and the contact's primary email address and the contact's personal information. The reason why we need these 4 scopes is, okay, so let me open one of the events here. And as you see here, you can see when you create an event on Google Calendar site, you can invite some people as attendees, and our sync service will link these attendees to the entries in Maximizer address book. The logic is we will link them with the email address first, but the thing is on Maximizer side, the email address is not a unique key for the address book entry, which means there could be duplicates address book entries with the same email address. So in that case, the sync service will try to search the customer's Google contacts with the email address. If they can find any Google contacts with the email address, they will try to get his profile and get some information like the first name and the last name, and we will try to match the entry with the names. Okay, so that's the reason why we need these scopes to search the Google contacts with email address and get the customer's profile. Okay. And the next one is view and edit events on all of the calendars. The reason why we need this scope is the sync service reads the events from Google and sync them to Maximizer. That's why we need the read scope. And the reason why we need the edit scope is once we create the appointments on Maximizer side, there will be a appointment ID generated by the Maximizer system, which is like a primary key of this appointment, and we will write this appointment ID to the extended property of event. So in that case, we will build up association or relationship between these 2 events. So that's why we needed the editor access for the event. Okay, so the last one is see and download any calendars that you can access using your Google Calendar. So, okay, so because the sync service also needs to read the customer's calendar, and once the sync service reads the customer calendar, they can reach the all the events of this calendar. So that's the reason why the sync service also need this scope for the calendars. Okay, so I think that's all the introduction about how our customers grant the access to these scopes and how we are going to use these scopes. If we are still missing anything, please let us know. Thank you. Bye.